Unbelievable. Can you hear me now? Yes. I am absolutely going to destroy this microphone after this program. It was a gift. I shouldn't do that. I was very grateful to have it, but I'm going to get another microphone because this is ridiculous. It just cuts off all on its own. I tested it several times this afternoon and this evening, so I do apologize. I'm not going to go back through everything I was talking about. It was just silly stuff. I apologize for the spelling mistakes. I apologize for not having a pop filter for my microphone last week. I've got one. I can't find it. My bad. And yeah, that was it. So let's get right into what we're talking about tonight. I think this is something that is worth thinking about, whether you're on board with me or not, whether you think what I'm saying is pure rubbish. I still think it's something that we should think about because there are bigger implications than just our hobby, and it's probably worth looking at some of this stuff. So the first thing I wanted to do was kind of get us up to date on all the fantastic things that have happened in macro photography in the last few months, maybe in the last half of a year, because a lot of cool stuff has happened. Nikon came out with a firmware update for the Z8, and now we have pixel shift, and it's been linked to their focus shift software in the camera, which it's a bit confusing why they did that or what the purpose of that was. A lot of people have written in reviews of this camera and this update of the software that somehow having pixel shift and focus shift tied to the same menu in the camera would somehow make stacking and stitching an easier process. That I don't understand. Pixel shift has nothing to do with shooting across the frame and gathering pictures in the x-axis. Nothing to do with it at all. It just gives you a sharper picture in the axis you're shooting in. So I'm not sure, but it's still an amazing thing. I'm going to do a video or a live stream in the next couple of weeks on the practicalities of using pixel shift with these Nikon cameras. And it's a lot of fun. It's really good. If you like high-res photographs, it's great. Sony's A9 Mark III, I guess it is, the global shutter, has revolutionized, for some people, outdoor macro and field stacking, whether it's with high-speed sync flashes, which is all that Sony talks about, or continuous light, which is what all my friends do. It's amazing. It's completely elevated outdoor focus stacking, handheld focus stacking. It's quite amazing, and it's because of this global shutter and extremely fast burst rates that allow folks to get a 200 image stack in under a second. That's why it's so mind-blowing. Canon's R1 brings upscaling into the actual camera so that you can boost your photograph to like 96 or 100 megapixels in JPEGs, and they've done something to their shutter. It's really for they call it neural upscaling. I don't know much about Canon cameras because I've never actually owned one, but it's another way of working around the difficulties of field stacking. Fujifilm has added pixel shift to the GFX 100S Mark II, which came out last year, and the 100 Mark II, which comes out this year, and they have multi-shot pixel shift that gives you images of 400 megapixels. 400 megapixels in a single image. Doesn't tell you where you have to go to buy the computer that can handle that, but it's amazing. OM Systems, the old Olympus, doubles down on their in-camera focus stacking. The Mark II that came out last year is supposedly the best in class for in-camera stacking and bracketing. It's the ideal platform to shoot when you're doing a lot of stacking in the field and you just can't take all that gear out there, like Alison does when she's doing slime molds in the field. She loves this camera, and I can see why. The AI tools that we've been talking a lot about from Adobe as well as from DxO, they have really improved a lot of the processing of field macro shots. We won't get into all of that, but Photolab 8 and 8.5, those of you who use it, just really incredible detail boosting, a lot like what we're seeing with Lightroom. Lightroom and Camera Raw over the last 6 months have brought in AI lens blur, which is the one I use when I'm using. Actually, I use it in Topaz as well. Very, very nice, and they've really come a long way. We spent Saturday talking in Afterstack about all of Photoshop's new developments, new tools, new ways of using tools. It was a pretty good Afterstack, and I just released that as a video this afternoon. So if you didn't get to go, you can watch that. I think you'll enjoy it. The focus stacking world is still Zerine versus Helicon. There's nothing new there. I think both of the platforms are now having change logs published, but otherwise it's still the same old stuff. You can't retouch, to my satisfaction, in one of them, but you can in the other. Go Zerine. Okay. Open source photomicrography is something that has always fascinated me. There was a platform that came out a few years ago now called OpenFlexure. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a 3D printable microscope that anybody can print. It doesn't cost very much, and you can use really inexpensive components, yet it gives you a very usable microscope. I did not print one, but I want to, and one day I will. But they have really moved ahead with what they're doing. They're up to version 7, and they have kits available. Check out their website. It's really good. They're linked up with a company called IO Rodeo. They're from Scotland. It's a man and a woman, engineers who have an open source platform that encourages development of software and hardware, and a lot of really cool photography stuff is coming out of their work. The Raspberry Pi big camera development with version 5 last year. Actually, was it last year? Yeah, it was. With the Sony IMX500 sensor, pretty amazing, and that camera is about as good as in any other. That sensor is as good as any other camera, and it's a lot of fun to use. I have Susan's here I'm doing some work with, and it is beautiful. It does a great job. Okay, so what else has been going on? Well, not as much as you might think. Laowa put out a new probe lens last year to add to their first probe lens. They put out this 15 to 35 T12, and they put out a T8 version 15 to 24, and they're available. You can buy them, but they are super expensive. I've actually got a picture of them, which I'll show you if I can find it. That's probably saying quite a lot. Yeah, it is. Hang on. The probe lenses are different than the original probe lens because they have an angle at the end, and they can do a lot more clever cinematic stuff. I don't know of anything that currently is being produced as far as commercial work, so I wouldn't know where to send you to look at anything, but their own documentation is really good. But let me show you. I'm going to show you the page from B&H, which is a fun place to look at new stuff, and yeah, you're going to gulp when you see how much these things cost. But yeah, maybe I should talk to Leia and see if they want to let me have a go with one of these. But yeah, that's the 3 versions of it, of the 15 to 35 periscope lens, 4.5, 4, and 4.5. Yep, way too rich for me. They're apparently very, very nice optically. Did you know that Mitutoyo has released a camera lens? I did not until I came across an article describing it. And let me see if I can find a picture of that. No, I don't have one. I've got a picture of the OpenFlex microscope though, OpenFlexure. I'll show you that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But Mitutoyo has a new lens. It's an industrial lens, but you know that it's going to end up in somebody's hands to take pictures with. It's called the Tag lens. It was released at the end of July, so it's only been out for 3 or 4 weeks. But this is a tunable liquid lens that is used to scan through focus in microseconds. I mean, it's incredibly fast, and it's used to basically take images that have all the focal planes you could ever need in it, so you can extract the information you need. It's being used in biomedical engineering and in inspection type stuff, industrial things. But yeah, it's going to come. It's going to come to us one of these days. You know it will. I'm sure they're staggeringly expensive, and you have to use their special software to make it run. It won't run on anything else, I don't think. But yeah, it's a very interesting lens. I was talking about liquid lenses and possible applications in macro a few years ago, and I'm amazed to see they brought one out. Rails and rail controllers. You know, this is one thing that has been stagnant for so long. There hasn't been a breakthrough of any kind in a long time, but WeMacro continues to pressure StackShot from China. I mean, StackShot's from here, but WeMacro's from China, but they continue to put the pressure on them by putting out less expensive, very accurate, very functional rails that have a lot of the features that we're looking for, with a built-in depth of field calculator, and works with iOS or Android, and it's even multilingual, which is clever. And yeah, it's really good. They have also started warehousing their rails and controllers all over the world. So if you order one from Europe or you order one from the US, you can get it right away. You don't have to wait months for the device to get mailed to you, which is cool. But what I want to say is, don't you think it's time that somebody in the US put together a rail package that could compete with StackShot, exceed the specs of StackShot where it's not great, and put out something that would be competition? Yeah, there is a company doing that, and I'm talking to them, and I'm going to be trying out their rail here in the next few weeks. And yeah, you need to stay tuned for that, because I think this is going to be big. This is going to be a very high quality but accessible rail for everybody. So stay tuned. So that's a lot of the stuff that's happened in macro in the last year. What's going on now with either these developments or others? Well, those probe zoom macros that I was showing you, the video lenses, they've been shipping now for several months, and they're being bought up, and they're being used apparently, though like I say, I haven't seen any commercial work. The OpenFlexure platform is now available to everybody. They're giving away the plans and selling kits as well. The progress in raw processing, either in Adobe's programs or in DxO, is amazing. The AI noise reduction, sharpening, it's all fantastic and just getting better and better. There are more camera bodies that are incorporating pixel shift and macro-friendly bracketing that can get to short lengths. More and more platforms are adding that functionality on, which seems like about time, but that's definitely an improvement. And we're starting to see, I hate to bring up the dirty word AI, but AI assistants are kind of creeping into macro rigs and DIY microscope rigs. People are using these agents now to control some of the motions, to control their Pi cameras, and yeah, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And yeah, they're being used for focus and all kinds of applications. The A9, of course, has taken our world by storm. It's really changed the way I think about field macro and especially field stacking. And while all that the Sony people talk about is how this camera can be used with high-speed flash, that's really not what it excels at. It excels at what we're seeing from our own friends in this community who are using it for focus stacking very, very successfully. The ultra high resolution images, like I said, are coming out of every shop now. Every camera brand is making something that churns out very high megapixel shots. Also, Photolab, which is a DxO program, and Deep Prime are putting out nicer and nicer stacks from real noisy images. I don't know what exactly they've done, but they've managed to get a hold of noise, kind of like Topaz did. Worth looking at. And of course, the OpenFlexure we talked about. Add to that a Pi camera and some other gadgets, and you can really make some very cool stuff for macro. So there's a lot going on, and it's very interesting and exciting and fun to look at. But what is going to happen in the coming years? I mean, how long is this sustainable, given everything else that's happening in our country and in on our Earth? Because I think we're watching the end of an era. I think that just like other very popular social organisms, like the whole world of photographers are changing now. I think this has happened before many times, and I think we're seeing it again, because everything is changing in photography, and macro photography too, though macro photography is something of a special case, as I'll explain. Somehow I managed to print off 3 sets of my notes, which was yeah, pretty terrible. So I've got some project ideas, but I'm going to talk about them later. What I really want to do is talk about where we're going, because I think that the thing that is changing everything is the presence of photoreal images at our fingertips at a moment's notice without having a camera. We can go on the computer and we can make images of whatever we have the language to describe, and we can produce images that look like photographs, and people will believe they're photographs. This has to very much change what we're doing as photographers, whether we like it or not, and I would argue that probably most of us don't like it. You know, if you can type a prompt and 15 seconds later you can get an image that's indistinguishable from a very fine photograph using something like OpenAI's Sora, I don't know if you're familiar with that, or Stability's SD3, these already generate sequences of images or stills that have depth cues, that have shadows, that have lighting, that is really hard to imagine that it came out of a computer. This weekend, we in AfterStack we're talking about developments in Photoshop, and one of the tools I was talking about was Harmonize, which is a tool that's used to change an object when you move it into another image. When you do a composite, it matches the lighting dynamics of the object that you move to the dynamics that exist in the original picture, and it's quite amazing to see. It's one of the most breathtaking bits of software I've ever encountered. If you haven't tried it, try it. And that's exactly what what I think we're dealing with here. Is we have machines now that are making pictures better than many of us can, and that's only going to get more and more dramatic. I don't think the term photoreal is going to exist 3 years from now. I think it'll be a completely irrelevant distinction, because all images that we're producing as art or commercial content will be photoreal by definition. Nobody will be putting out anything that didn't look like it was taken with a camera. So I think we're going to see that just disappear from the lingo. And now you don't need thousands and thousands of dollars of cameras and lenses and bags and chargers and batteries to produce images that serve your purpose. You just need your computer in 15 seconds to do it. So what is going to happen to photography? I think to get a handle on what's going to happen to photography, we need to think of photography as a few separate things, because it's not all the same. Photography can serve a purpose as a documentary tool, and I believe that is going to hang on a good bit longer than the other forms of photography that I'm going to tell you about. But as a record, as a keeping of a record, photography is probably safe for now, but it's probably getting pressure too. Journalism, science, medicine, law enforcement, all of these things that require imagery that is accurate and true and certifiable. These things, I think, are going to stick around as long as we have ways to authenticate them. And in fact, authentication becomes more important than the photography, really. I think proving the provenance of a photograph and having some kind of a record, whether you're using blockchain or some other technology that is, at least for now, untouchable, to show that this is an actual photograph, whether you're talking about journalism or law enforcement, that's going to become the real focus, not the images themselves. So I think photographers are going to take a second role here in getting photographs. Have you noticed in Adobe's export window now, you can use this content authenticity initiative form that they've added in there, that basically I think they're pushing to make it the industry standard, that it'll prove to anybody that looks at it that this particular photograph was taken by this camera at this time, and it's authenticated through blockchain. So I think that's going to be the main focus for those documentarian photographers. What about photographers who are making art, which I would argue is most of us? I don't think at the end of 5 years we're going to exist in the way we do now. I think that what's going to happen is what we think of as artistic photography is going to be fractured by all of these AI tools that are going to force us to either engage with the AI and kind of develop hybrid art forms, or we're going to be purists and take the risk of not having of the expense and the lack of interest from an audience, and we're going to stick to our guns and do the photography we do now, or we're going to just give up and let these AIs produce the artwork, and we'll just give them prompts. So there are three ways, and I think that most likely we're not going to be extinguished by this, but we're going to be so hybridized that we won't be recognizable. And I think most people will end up in that middle of the road area where we're working with AI like we do now. If we use Lightroom, if we use Topaz, we're working with it to a greater or lesser extent, and I think that's just going to become more and more obvious. You know, when photography was invented, photographers were pretty bummed out. They thought they were going to be out of work, and I think a lot of the hyper-realistic photographers did find themselves struggling for work. But out of that stress was, you know, impressionism and cubism and conceptual painting and abstract stuff. And so just like art changed in response to this explosion of photography, so will what we do in the future when photography is basically trashed by AI. I think that galleries and collectors will always value authentic photographs, but they're going to get really expensive and hard to find and rare, as there are fewer and fewer photographers taking them. So what about photography as a profession? So we talked about documentarians and artists, but what about professional photographers? They're going to be wiped off the face of the planet. Why would anybody hire somebody for $2,000 a day to photograph shampoo bottles when you can take them off the internet in 2 minutes and pay $100 for them? I think we're going to see the sectors of product photography, even portrait photography and event photography, is going to dry up really, really quickly, if it hasn't already started to now. Maybe there's going to be a niche in the event photography, the wedding photography, where initially at least people are going to value the authenticity of the photographs that are taken by a photographer. But I see it as only a matter of time before people are going to opt for basically an idealized wedding book, an AI touched up wedding photograph book, which is going to be basically perfect. I think that people will just default to that eventually. In the commercial world, there are going to be some niche photographers, and I'm thinking now of people who are mostly into technical photography, like us, macro photographers, who are going to fare just a little bit better, because when you're photographing rare or complicated or teeny tiny subjects, seeds or insects or crystals or medical specimens, whatever it is, that's very hard for AI to fake convincingly, at least today. And when people want truth, they're probably still going to turn to you know, the real McCoy. But that's an unusual niche off in the corner of commercial imaging. There are going to be a lot of adaptations that we make to survive the changes that are coming. It's all going to become about proof and provenance. I think we're all going to end up having to get involved with you know, having metadata seals on our work, or camera signatures. There's going to be a way to encrypt all that stuff, and watermarking and all this. We're going to have to incorporate that into our workflow, just to remain relevant. And I also think one of the changes we're going to see is the focus is going to shift from the work product, in other words, the photograph. People aren't going to come to me, for example, and say, hey, I want you to teach me how to take better photographs. I think that that is going to be, if they want a better photograph, they can go to their AI and get one. What they can't get, though, is the experience of getting the photograph, is the experience of doing photography. And I think that photographers who are in the realm of teaching, which is a lot of us, are going to see more emphasis on the thrill of getting the shot and what you have to do to get the shot. And it will become, for me, it already is. That's kind of the way I've always approached photography. It's the act itself that is so rewarding, and not so much the photographs I get from it. But I think we're going to see an experience economy take the place of a photograph economy. I think that we're also going to see the development of curation as a real photographic skill. I know that many of us, we'll go out and we'll take pictures, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. We'll show them, we'll forget about them, they'll go in a file somewhere. But I think the photographers that are going to be able to put their photographs together in a kind of succinct but meaningful storyline, who are going to create some kind of a sequence or a context out of their images, they're going to be doing something that AI can't do. AI doesn't do the feeling stuff, but storytelling and using your images in a way that is creative to bring together a series of thoughts and feelings that might not otherwise stick together without the photographs. I think that's really important, and I think we're going to see that as being something that is going to keep some photographers around, the ones that are really good at that. Survival is going to require that we find ways to integrate with these AI programs that are coming along. It's all good and well to stamp your feet and be dead set against having anything to do with AI. I get that. I mean, I vacillate back and forth, but I understand that some people just can't deal with it. They hate it. But the people that are going to survive, not just commercially, but the people that are going to be successful as amateur photographers are going to be the ones that learn to use the AI, that learn how to use it to do batch processing of images or keywording or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. If you resist it, I think that there's a good chance that you get marginalized because you're not going to be competitive. All right, so is photography going to survive? Potentially, but not in any form that we recognize today. I don't think so. It'll endure, but its purpose and its center of gravity is going to shift, and it's going to happen in the next decade. I really do believe that, and I'm going to lay out what I think is going to happen over the next decade to show you what I mean. I think that the technical photography the technical photography trade is gone. I don't think that's going to survive. I think that the artistic and documentary practice of photography is going to change so dramatically that you might not want to do it anymore. But it'll splinter into these sub genres of pure photography and hybrid photography, that type of thing. For those of us that think of macro photography or photography in general as a professional identity, for those of us who are so cursed to think that I am a macro photographer and that's what makes me me, I think the only people that are going to survive with that mindset are the ones who can completely embrace the importance of storytelling and education and human connection. It's going to come down to that. It has to. And so it's not dying, it's mutating. And sometimes things that mutate have a hard time surviving. So let's have a look at the next 10 years. What's going to happen between today and let's say 2 years from now, I think that we're going to see AI photoreal image making is going to become absolutely mainstream. It'll be everywhere, and it'll be impossible to distinguish stills from the photographs that we take. I believe that will happen within 2 years. Adobe's content initiative, the authentication thing, will catch on, and everybody will be using it within a couple of years. Without it, you know, your photographs become valueless. I think commercial contracts are going to disappear, and successful stock houses, product photographers, catalog studios, they need to find something else to do, because I just don't see how they're going to make it. Between 2027, say, and 2030, the next 3 years after that, I think that we're going to see advertising take a huge flip from almost all of it being real photography at the end of next year, to almost all of it being fake. I mean, they're just, I don't think there's any way around that. I think that hybrid type photographers that are embracing AI but still taking pictures, are going to find that they're using AI in every image, either to pre-visualize it, or to expand the image, or to polish real photographs. If that's not already the case, at 3 years from now, everybody will be doing that. It'll just be part of the normal workflow, just like using a program like Lightroom is today. The education that I was talking about, I think, is going to pivot sharply into the experience of taking photographs, rather than the capturing of perfection in your photography. By 2030, I think we're going to see a real divide in the photography that's left. I think we're going to see two parallel kinds of photographer: the documentary and scientific photographer. And these people are going to be technicians. Their work is going to be cryptographically authenticated at every step along the way. It'll be medical and forensic and ecological. It'll be all of the things that people absolutely need it for, that it can't be replaced. Those people are going to become technicians, like they're managing secret data for the government. Artistic photography, like I talked about, is going to merge fully by 2030 with digital art. I don't think there will be a distinction. Photographs and digital hybrids will be shown in galleries. They'll be sold in shops, and people will think of it as just regular straight photography. And I think that you'll still see a consumer demand for real images, but I mean real images of events like weddings or whatever it is you're trying to memorialize. I think that by 2030, the authenticity of those images will be less important, and people will be not only willing, but they will be seeking out ways to get more perfect pictures, whether they're true or not. It's a sad thing to think about, but yeah, I think so. By 2035, it'll just be, I think, set in stone that we're going to have this verified capture group of photographers, the technicians, the synthetic creators that are just using AI, and then the hybrid imaginers, I like to think that most of us would be in that group, but I don't know. I think photography will continue to exist as a craft. People will love it, but it's going to be much the same as film photography or working in a darkroom. It's going to be something that's, well, we didn't even talk about this, but we should talk about this because it's important. Money. I think money is a really important part of this. The more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, you know what? We are, the pressures of the financial realities of living in the world today is making photography less and less accessible to the masses. It's no longer something that everybody can do just without giving it a whole lot of thought. It's something that is expensive and getting more and more expensive, to where it's something that not everybody who wants to do it can do it. And I think that as that gets worse, we're going to see, we've already seen the entry-level equipment disappear. DSLRs, that used to be the way everybody got into photography, was buying a cheap D3200, the cheapest DSLR that the camera company makes, and some kind of nifty 50 lens to put on it, and learning photography from that. You can't even do that anymore. The cheapest cameras you can find that are serious photography cameras are crop frame mirrorless cameras that cost $2,500. That is leaving a lot of people out. The entry level market is drying up. The Canon R10, the Nikon Z30, the Sony A6100, they are considerably more expensive than the DSLRs that they replaced. Lenses, you can't buy a new prime lens, a 50mm prime lens, from anything but one of the knockoff Chinese companies for less than $150. It used to be for $80 you could buy the nifty 50 from Nikon or Canon. They just don't exist anymore. And what about what about the equipment you need to process the images you're taking? Let's say you do manage to get a mirrorless camera that's got a huge number of megapixels. What are you going to process it on when a basic laptop is $1,500 and you need $20 or $40 a month in subscriptions to use an editing program or whatever else you need? That's now unavoidable. And if you're in macro photography, for crying out loud, and you're taking pictures that are made up of 200 or 300 or 400 large files, how are you going to afford that? How can anybody afford it? So the floor price for getting into serious photography, especially technical photography, is just kind of nuts now. And I think it's going to hurt a lot of people. So what else was I going to say about pricing? The cameras that are kind of being normalized as the mainstream cameras for serious enthusiasts, like the Sony A1 or the Nikon Z9, Canon R3, or the GFX 100 from Sony, their prices have leveled off between 5 and 10 grand for the camera alone, not counting the lenses. So that's the flagship models. And the computers that can handle 100 megapixel pixel shift or huge focus stacks, they are just expensive any way you cut it. And there is no prosumer group in the middle anymore. It's the flagship stuff and it's the entry level, but there isn't a middle ground for anybody. So I think that we're seeing fewer and fewer. And I don't have data for this, but I've been doing this professionally for 7 years this month, and I believe there are fewer and fewer young people and entry-level people coming into our community. I think probably because it's just too expensive. The threshold looks too high. I think there is also a loss of this culture of kind of like apprenticeship, where you'd come into a group like this, and the really gifted folks would kind of be channeled through and encouraged, and would end up going on to do something in the profession of photography. Don't see that either. And I think that photography is at risk of becoming kind of like darkroom photo enlargement, or collecting vinyl records. It's just going to get so rarefied and crazy niche that you know, we're not going to have a critical mass of people doing it to sustain the kind of model we have now. And at the end of the day, I guess I haven't even mentioned cell phones. I hate taking pictures with cell phones, but you know, when people are comparing snapping a picture with the cell phone that's pretty good and getting better, so most people think, to taking a picture with a camera that costs $3,000. Yeah, it's not hard to see why some people are just not going there. However, there are, I think, some reasonable objections to some of those ideas. One of them is, I think that there are forces that are at work that run counter to what I just said. For example, many people would argue that cell phones and the pictures that they take are kind of like a feeder to cameras and to photography. People who use them for photography soon get to, that's how I got started. When I got back into photography after some years away from it, I started with a cell phone and quickly realized that these pictures were pants, and I needed to get a camera and up my game. And that most definitely was a result of having used the phone for some time. So I think it's reasonable to say that computational photography in phones is pretty amazing, but for most people who have photography in their blood, it's not going to be enough. I think the used market, not a market I care for that much. I think they're a bit cutthroat, but there are companies like KEH and MPB and even eBay that are selling late model DSLRs, late model mirrorless cameras at reasonable prices. They give you nothing for your trade-in, of course, but and they are a bit vampiric in the way they do business, I think. But yeah, they are resilient, and these companies are quite big, and I think that they can offer an alternative to these super expensive entry points. I love the innovators in macro, especially Laowa, TT Artisan, whose lenses I've reviewed, Godox, We Macro. These companies are creative. They're making affordable gear. They're targeting the niches that the big companies are ignoring. I think they are a power to be reckoned with, and I think that would be another argument against my doom saying. And a community like we have here, I think that between the education and contests that we do, and the experience of just having macro as a shared passion, I think that counteracts some of the barrier of cost. I think we're willing to put a little more cash down for a camera than we normally would, because this is important. This part of it is important. I know it is to me. So what that's going to mean, I don't know. I don't know on balance whether what I've said is going to scare people off, or whether or not we can weather the storm. I don't know. But I have to add one thing, two things actually. This has been on my mind a lot, and I'm going to finish with this, because there is a huge historic precedent that can inform us about this, and that is, in the worst case scenario, what would happen to photography as an art, a science, or a profession in the event of a widespread civil disturbance in this country, which is not completely out of the question, I would say. It would change camera ownership and photography overnight, immediate. There would be questions of freedom of people to carry cameras. Many would start documenting the chaos. Just look at the journalists that have sprung up in places like Syria and Ukraine and Chile. But these people are also at risk. They're putting their lives at risk. There's also, whenever a country is in the throes of a civil unrest, there's a lot of censorship and a lot of propaganda, and never have we lived in a world that is more exposed to the dangers of propaganda when we have all of this fake or false imagery. So authenticity, provenance, and unmanipulated images would become an urgent issue, because that AI-generated propaganda would make us very unsure of what was real. And the destruction of infrastructure, the loss of studios and galleries and commercial work would just disappear. So I think that photography would pivot to survive, as it always does. But I think as a widespread pastime, it would end. What about in an even more a more significant upheaval than that? What if the shenanigans that are going on around the world result in a world conflict? It is absolutely fascinating to look at the trajectory of photography through world wars. If you have not done so, it's worth looking at. Consumer camera production stops in every country. It just stops. But immediately, Nikon started making Japanese military optics. Kodak was the main producer of reconnaissance film over here. Leica and Zeiss their factories were called into use as war factories. And the same factories that make cameras today will probably be making drones or optics or sensors or something down the road. Materials would be scarce, and they would not be earmarked for making cameras. So the availability of civilian photography gear would just stop. It would dry up. There wouldn't be any. And all of a sudden, photographers would start having an active role in whatever was going on, because the importance of photography and documentation and in intelligence gathering is, you just have to look back to World War II and Vietnam to see how frontline photojournalism really changed the face of the conflict. And creating a cultural record in that vacuum of photography. Some of the most iconic photographs ever taken were taken as part of a war record. Capra's D-Day photograph, or the flag over Iwo Jima. Those photographs were they defined a whole period for many people. So I think if we ended up in a conflict like that, then I think civilian and soldier photographers alike would produce the images that would become the touchstones for our future generations if we survived it. So if we survived such a conflict, the one thing that we could look forward to is, in the aftermath of any kind of global conflict like that, there is an explosion, a renaissance of all of these things that we love, but photography had its absolute biggest heydays right after the two world wars. So that would be something to look forward to. That was a bummer, wasn't wasn't it? That was a real downer. But, you know, you got to talk about these things, I guess. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. We're going to be upbeat on Thursday. We're going to be talking about all the ways that we as a group, or you as an individual, or me as an individual, can take what we've been given in macro photography and give some of it back if we want to people who can really benefit from it. And I'm going to tell you some stories about people that have done that and are continuing to do it. And it'll be super uplifting and fun to talk about. So I do apologize for being a bit of a downer tonight, but I needed to exercise these thoughts from my mind. I'm going to go look at the chat, but I don't want to, because there's going to be 115 messages saying, hey, your microphone's turned off, you dumb whatever. At least I picked up on it before the end of the program. So don't take away a like from me just because I forgot the microphone. Or you can if you want. All right, guys, let me get back to the other page so I can see if there's anybody still here. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself. So, you know, the first step is admitting you have a problem. So phones are the gateway drugs to hard photography. Yes, but Paul, that's a good way of putting it. I think that about sums it up. Nikon 28mm f2.8 normal for an APS-C mirrorless is $240. Adjusted for inflation, it's basically the same as a 1980s 50mm f1.8. You are such a clever guy. Yep. You know, until you adjust for inflation, you're right. But you do also know that income hasn't gone up in those same 40 years. So there is that. Maybe the prices are similar, but people don't have the money to spend. Thursday, squirrels, Joseph says. Macro squirrels, I agree. And I had my camera focused on the wall behind me for the last hour. I have no idea how that happened either, but thank you for telling me that. I'm going to have to do a complete hardware overhaul to figure out what's going on. I think my studio might have suffered from the water situation, or possibly is possessed. But I do apologize, really I do. Okay, I'm going to split. Let me see if there are any. Oh, Diane, thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate you. And yep, that's it. I am going to look through all the other comments except the ones that say your microphone's off. And Joseph has corrected me again. I'm not gonna respond to that one. You guys take care. It's after 9 o'clock, and I will see you on Thursday, or I'll see you on Saturday. And that's all there is to it. Good night, and thanks for coming.